All right, everyone. Well, I know it's been a couple of weeks, but we are back and continuing on this week with the big summer movie series of tutorials here on Planet with another highly anticipated feature this week. Harry Potter opened in theaters, and we're going to take a look at some of the poster images that they've been producing for this movie. It's been a very interesting concept of the design of the movie posters for this movie. And it's going to take a look at a couple of techniques involved with that. So we're going to kind of build this from the background and just build up from that. So we're going to start with a very basic image for the background. Here I have this image of this room, and I'm just going to take it and drag it and drop it into my working file here. Now, because it's going to be a background image, it doesn't need to be proportional. It's just a design element. So what we're going to do is press Command-T to invoke the free transform. We'll zoom out here a little bit here. And all I'm going to do is disproportionately size this so it fits in my image. Just like that. I'm not worried about the proportions or how the room looks. As I said, it's just a background element. So it's something to consider when you're looking at a group of photos. When it's going to be a background element or a design element, it really doesn't matter what it is. It just has to have a certain look. So, continuing on, we're going to create a new blank layer above that one. And I go over here in my toolbar, and we're going to choose the rectangular marquee tool. And I'm just going to say there's a lot of steps in this tutorial, and I'm probably going to go a little bit faster than normal, but I'll try and just go as slow as I can in the critical parts. But of course, feel free to play this back if you miss something along the way. All right, so back to our layer here. Inside of that selection, I just made a selection a little bit bigger than the window itself here, right about there. I'm just going to go ahead and fill it with white. So I'm going to press Shift-Delete. Use my fill window here and select white in the use menu and click OK. We'll go and deselect. Now I'm going to run a blur on this. Let's go into the filter menu and go to blur, Gaussian blur, and we're going to give this a really big blur. Let's go about 50 pixels here. And what I'm going to do next is inside of the layers panel, we're going to go in here and change the blend mode of this layer from normal to dissolve. And that's going to give it a really speckly look, as you see right there. But now I want to apply a blur to this. If I do it now, it's going to stay in the dissolve mode. What I want is for it to look like this, but be in normal blend mode. So simply create a new blank layer underneath that one by holding down the Command key, Control on Windows, and click the new layer icon. Click right on that layer again above it, and simply press Command-E, Control-E on Windows, and that merges it down, keeping the speckly effect intact. So now we're going to go under the filter menu, go down here to blur, and we're going to go this time choose radial blur. And inside here we're going to set the amount all the way to 100 and set the blur method to zoom. And then click OK. And you can see it's giving me a little bit of a blur. I'm going to intensify that a little bit more by reapplying that filter. Just go into the filter menu and choose the very first item, which is the last filter applied. And it will apply that with the same settings as before. Now let's add another element to this image. Here I have a picture of this dove. And I don't need necessarily a really clean selection, so I'm just going to use my magic wand tool here. Go inside of the image and just click once in the background. Then go into the select menu and choose inverse. Now the bird himself is selected. Then we'll just take that element and drag and drop it into our image here. Now I can get rid of that little dark edge on my image if you just simply quickly go under the layer menu and go down to the very bottom. It goes off screen here, but it says matting, and choose defringe. And I'm going to set this to about 5 and click OK, and it takes care of that edge, that little harsh edge on there a little bit. So now I'm going to press Command-T, and I'm going to hold down my Shift Option, Shift-Alt on Windows, and let's just take this and drag it down. And position that bird right up here towards the top, right about there. I'm going to make a duplicate of that bird layer simply by pressing Command-J. And let's just move this to the other side. And I'm going to press Command-T once more. And let's Control-click right on that object, or right-click right on it. And I'm going to choose Flip Horizontal. And of course, keeping it in free transform mode, I'm going to go ahead and scale it down a little bit, just so there's a little bit of variation between this one and the one on the other side. So that's it with the bird. Now, let's add a color element to this. We're actually going to add a hue saturation adjustment layer to give the overall image some color. So let's go into the adjustment layer menu, and I'm going to choose hue saturation. Here in the adjustment panel, We're going to go here and check on colorize to give the overall image a color, and let's set the hue right here to 185, and the saturation I'm going to go ahead and bump up to 50. So we're getting a nice monochromatic color image back there. Well, now I'm going to add our subject. Here I have a photo of a model that I'm going to use for my subject of this poster. So let's go ahead and take this and drag and drop it. I've already extracted it from the background for the sake of time. And I'm going to go ahead and drag and drop it into this working image. Now, we need to process this image a little bit. So the first thing we're going to do is, with that layer selected, we're going to throw an adjustment layer on this. Again, we're going to go into the adjustment layer menu here. And let me get back to my workspace here. Here at the bottom of the layers panel, I'm going to go ahead and click the adjustment layer menu, and again we're going to add hue saturation, and this time simply going to drop the overall saturation of this image to -50. Now you'll notice that it is affecting the background as well, and I really only want it to affect my subject. So inside of my layers panel here, let's just take this and drag it out. What I'm going to do is clip this inside of that layer by holding down the Option key and clicking in between those layers. And it isolates that correction just to the subject here. Now we're going to go in here into the adjustment layer menu and add yet another hue saturation adjustment. And again, as before, I'm going to clip it inside of this image. Now what I'm going to do is, on this adjustment layer, look over here and we're going to activate colorize. And like before, we're going to enter some numbers here, and this time I'm going to enter 178 for the hue, and let's do 45 for the saturation. Back over here into the layers panel on that adjustment layer, we're going to change the blend mode of this adjustment layer to soft light. And then we're going to drop the opacity of it to 50%. So it's starting to take on the green tinge that's kind of going on all around this background, making our subject blend in with the background a little bit more. You'll notice before and after. It just really just jumps off. It doesn't look right. Now it's starting to fit into the atmosphere that we're creating a little bit better. So obviously I got to move that bird and everything like that. We'll take care of that in just a moment. Now what I want to do is I'm going to load this layer as a selection, the shape, our original shape of our subject here. So I'm going to command click right on that layer, and you'll see it loads it as a selection. I'm going to create a brand new layer at the very top of the layer order here. And with that selection active, I'm going to press Shift Delete. And inside the fill menu, we're going to choose 50% gray and click OK. Go ahead and deselect. Now, we're going to add a layer style to this. So I'm going to double click on it and open up the layer style panel. And here, first, in the blending options, we're going to take this fill opacity setting right here and drop it all the way to 0. So that the pixels on our layer will remain transparent, completely invisible, and we will only be able to see the effect we apply through layer styles. So with that down, let's go over here and first apply an outer glow. And then for the color, I'm going to open up the color picker and just sample this really light greenish color in the background here. Maybe make it a little bit lighter. And we'll increase the size, and this will give us a little bit of a glow going around our subject, as you can see. Also, we're going to activate the inner glow. And again, same thing, activate the color, go in here and select that very light bluish color there, and increase the size in here, and you'll see the glow is starting. It's almost looking like the light is wrapping around our subject here. And if it seems a little too intense, we can just drop that opacity down, just like that. Notice the difference between that. Really kind of helps it blend in more. Now there's some area at the bottom down here. It's kind of getting the glow inside where we don't necessarily want it. So we're going to have to take care of that with a layer mask. But before we do that, let's go back into the blending options. And down here in the middle of the advanced blending section, you've got an item called Layer Mask Hides Effects. Go ahead and check that on because it will be off by default. And now we can click OK. On that layer, let's go ahead and add a layer mask to it. Go in here and grab our gradient tool using the foreground to transparent. It's going to give us a little nudge up, and it takes care of that glow area there. So we're looking pretty good. Got to do one more thing, actually a couple more things really quick. So again, we're going to go down here and load this object or this subject as a selection by command clicking directly on it and making sure that layer is highlighted. We're going to copy this person or this subject to the clipboard. Then let's go inside of our channels palette, go to the very bottom and create a new blank layer. or a new blank alpha channel rather. And we still have this selection active, so I'm going to go into the edit menu and go to paste. And it pastes inside of that alpha channel a black and white version of our subject. Well, now what we're going to do is I'm going to bring up my levels. I'm going to press Command L, Control L on Windows. And what we're going to do is push the shadows in, because what we're really after is just the highlighted areas here. Let me bump up this. Just those highlighted areas right about there. Inside of my image there. Then we're going to go into the filter menu and go to blur and choose Gaussian blur. Give it a very small blur, about 10 pixels should do. And click OK. Then I'm going to press Command L again. We're going to go back into our levels and push these highlights up a little bit more, just to make that a little bit brighter. This is going to increase the highlights on our subject. So now that alpha channel is done, we're going to Command or Control click right on it to load it as a selection. You notice the cursor changes. Back into our composite channel, back into the original image. Let's go ahead and create a new layer at the very top of the layer order. And I'm going to go ahead and fill this selection with white. So I'm going to press Shift Delete. Let's choose white. And it gives me a little bit more enhanced glow on our subject. And let's just take that and change the blend mode of that layer from normal to overlay. So it's giving me that little bit of contrast. And if it seems too much, you can always drop the opacity down. And of course, one final thing we need to add, and that is, of course, the text, which I've already set up here. My own little version here. Got the font off dafont.com. It's D-A-F-O-N-T. And you can get it, and you can see that I've got a layer style on here. And I'll just open this up so you can see what's going on. I've got just a very simple drop shadow and a very harsh bevel and emboss setting here. So you can just take a look at the settings I've got there applied on that text. And notice it's not in color, because what I'm going to do is drag and drop this in and place it behind, or at the very bottom where we've got all that coloring going on. And of course, like the actual poster, let's go ahead and increase the size up quite a bit and rotate it just like that. And it seems I need to reposition that one bird there. It's right about there. Perhaps even scale it in a little bit. But there we have it. New in theaters, the Harry Potter effect, right here on Planet.